Hidden Object Guru here with a look at some games that I recently sampled. As always, I'm going to be rating these out of 10 based on how excited I am to go back and play some more. Let's start with Friendly Sheeps. This markets itself as a chill, cozy farming sim, stripped to the bone of all extraneous content, and it certainly seems to be that. I got most of the way through the tutorial, hanging out on my farm, making and selling butter, growing wheat to sell or feed to my sheep, just generally hanging out in a small fenced-in area. Unfortunately, a fairly large bug interrupted my progress. The entire game takes place inside the plot of land, and the only way to refresh a sheep's needs, allowing for more milking and shearing, is to exit and change days. But when I came back after one refresh, my sheep had moved outside the fencing, and I could no longer interact with them. There's no way to leave the fence without advancing time. I tried changing days again, but now I had trapped sheep that were also starving. As you can imagine, I ducked out of continuing the game, as I wasn't going to neglect my virtual sheep and have them starve to death. Hopefully they'll fix this bug sooner rather than later, because this genuinely seems to be a charmingly chill farming experience. 5 out of 10. Max Mustard. Just buy this right now? I liked Astrobot and all, but I felt cheated out of a VR mode. As fun as the gameplay was, it didn't wow the way Astrobot Robo Rescue did on the PSVR. Platforming just looks better in VR, when your avatar is a little guy running around in a diorama that the player is able to freely look around wherever they want. Would the swooping movements make some people sick? Sure, but Max Mustard proves that Astrobot wasn't a fluke. This is just a better way to play platformers, and Max Mustard, with its adorable plant elephants to rescue and VR shooting mode, proves that you don't need the resources of Sony to make an incredible VR platformer. You need this in your life if you have a PSVR 2. I'm gonna go beat it now. 9 out of 10. Guardians of the Sangtree. It's city building with a bit of tower defense thrown in. The premise is simple enough. Owls have to defend a sacred tree from bugs, and they do that by managing water resources to generate enough food to support workers who build the weapons and defenses needed to keep the bugs out. It's careful in its pacing and has a great tutorial that goes through every step of getting a base going in a super clear manner. Likewise, the game lays out a constant stream of new performance targets to hit so that the player can unlock new units and buildings. There was never a moment where I felt unmotivated or confused about what I was supposed to be doing. Definitely a solid experience. 6 out of 10. Ghost of Time. Well, this is just really clever. It's not the first game I've played about sacrificing clones of yourself to solve puzzles, but it's certainly one of the better examples of it. The levels are deviously designed, the deaths are shockingly gory, the premise, a crazed man uses clones of himself to earn drugs from a machine, is deranged. I don't know what to complain about here. They've even put in a timer at the top of the screen so that you can carefully time out the actions of one of the clones before moving on to the next. Add to that a particularly ingenious boss fight, and the result is a game I can't wait to dig back into. Great job, devs. 8 out of 10. Interior Designer. Just like the sheep farming sim, this is an unusually stripped-down decorating game. I'm used to elaborate renovations and skills, having to manually sand and paint walls, dispose of old furniture, and unpack the new stuff, sometimes even assemble it. This time, it's all been streamlined until the player is just pointing and clicking to transform rooms. A player picks furniture from a list, adjusts colors at a whim. The decoration is all result, no fuss. Much like the garage flipper we recently covered, this almost feels like a mini-game inside another larger experience. But if you're looking to simply play around with some rooms, I can't see it being much more accessible than this. 7 out of 10. Blue Hunter. Right now, this is just a concept piece, showing off the mechanics of a larger game. Those mechanics? Simple deck builder combat. The player can play X amount of cards per turn. The opponent has to announce their move before they do it. Pretty standard stuff, really. The monsters look good, and the card obtaining system, where every time you defeat a monster, you can add its ability to your deck or recycle it for cash, is a good one. The only thing that seemed off balance-wise is that the player doesn't get more experience for killing more monsters. Defeat a foe in a round, 1 ability point to spend between rounds. Defeat a boss, 6 ability points. Defeat 3 enemies simultaneously, which is considerably more difficult than fighting a boss, 1 ability point. Definitely something the devs should look into rebalancing. 5 out of 10. Sammy Jukes, Twin Pines. It's a fairly standard graphic adventure game. The player moves from location to location, talking to people using a list of canned questions, grabbing items and unlocking new questions to go back and ask everyone in town. The big difference is that this is all handled in a first-person 3D exploration context, which is a nice change of pace. Some of the mechanics are a bit confusing. I didn't really understand why I couldn't interact with a recently dug pile of dirt, even though I'd found a shovel. But the game is actually very consistent. Sammy, the detective that the player is controlling, needs to have a reason to do things. So unless he finds a piece of information leading to that pile of dirt, he's not going to start randomly digging up the town. The writing is decent and the voice acting is solid if a little generic, and I'm looking forward to see where the story goes from here. Also, there's a pettable dog that gives you hints about the investigation, so yes, please, more of that. 8 out of 10. Nightmare Mansion, Scary Dreams. It's a puzzle game in a haunted house. Unfortunately, the game doesn't have clear mechanics or instructions. It's controller only, which is fine, but when I hover my aim point over an interactable object, a guide comes up to tell you which button does what function. But all of them are X's, so every time I have to trial and error into figuring out what buttons I'm supposed to push. There are zombies, I need a weapon to kill them, but I couldn't find one anywhere in the house. A mimic asked me for plasma, and I'm sure there's some around, but where? I don't need a lot of hand-holding, but I'd love to have a slight idea about what I'm supposed to be doing. 3 out of 10. Detective 2112. Demo. I'm always in the market for a new mouse-look shooter, especially when it's got such an intriguing cyberpunk setting like this one does. I guess what I really want is a sequel to The Ascent, but I guess this'll do for now. The fundamentals are strong. The combat works well enough, there's a stealth option for encounters, even body hiding. What I'm not impressed by just yet is the AI and encounter design. When I started combat, enemies started spawning in out of nowhere, not even like emerging from otherwise inaccessible doors, just being dropped onto the map. It strips a lot of the strategy out of the combat if enemies can just appear next to the player and immediately start shooting. Likewise, the enemies have a bad habit of just charging into combat. I appreciate that, with the camera being so close to the action, enemies have to actually get on screen before shooting. But in practice, this led to hordes of enemies just charging into my assault rifle fusillade. Maybe pull the camera back a little and let them act strategically. Still, this is just a demo and there's plenty of time to fix these issues. If they want to send me a copy of the full game, I'd be happy to give it a look as I wait for The Ascent 2. 6 out of 10. Tobla, Divine Path. They promised Portal-style gameplay, and gosh did they deliver. A serene setting, a godlike weirdo joking with you about the tasks, lots of puzzles based on swapping items from place to place. This is Portal vibes down to the ground. And since we haven't had a new Portal game in over a decade, this should definitely scratch that itch for those missing the portal hopping action. I'm only half an hour in, but I'm loving the puzzles. I haven't even gotten frustrated enough to check if there's a hint system yet. Although I should do that. Be right back. No, it does not have a hint system, which is obviously a tick against it, but really, the thing is so charming that I'm still recommending it. 7 out of 10. Nuclear Lizard Island Rampage. I'm always down for a new attempt at Rampage. I'll never understand how, now that we finally have the technology to make a satisfying city-destroying game, that franchise remains completely dead. There was a movie, and they couldn't make a full game out of it. Is it a rights thing? Because of the movie? Anyway, this attempt at an airsats Rampage is a little under-featured at the moment. The lizard has just 2 attacks that I saw, a punch and a grab, and there's no real depth to destruction mechanics. Just punch a wall a couple of times and you're done. Eating people offers points that can be used to upgrade the monster between rounds, but there aren't any skills or new attacks, just stat improvements that barely affect gameplay. Maybe later revisions of the game will add elements like a mini-map to help the player find the last target, but unless it does, I likely won't be coming back soon. 5 out of 10. Cursed Dungeon Raider. Right now the game is in a closed alpha, and there's not much to react to. I'll come back and check in again once there's an arrow pointing me towards the cursed dungeon full of traps and monsters. In 10 minutes of wandering around a snowy island, the most dangerous thing I encountered was a sore finger from holding the walk forward key non-stop. Still, I'll leave it installed and watch for updates, because that's a good looking museum, and I'd like to see it filled. 4 out of 10. Mahjong Riddles Egypt. It's more Taipei, but this time with an Egyptian theme. I mean, what do you want me to say here? We know exactly what we're dealing with, right? Matching tiles, shuffling when you're out of moves, collect pieces of treasures for beating levels, then put them together to learn fun facts about Egypt. It's a blast, and exactly what you want out of a chill Taipei game. If you like Taipei towers, you can't go wrong with this one, and I love them. I just love them more in the context of a game about fighting werewolves, so I can only give this one a 7 out of 10. Innsmouth 22. So it's a visual novel themed around the shadow over Innsmouth. That's always welcome, and the setup is nice enough. A guy's invited to a conference for his work in Boston, but he loves to dive because his American mother was way into the ocean, so they suggest he go diving in Innsmouth for a few days before the conference starts. If you've read the story, it's clear where all this is going, but I won't spoil it if you haven't. The text seems fine, and it's a creepy situation, but I'm not likely to keep digging into it because I find the art so off-putting. It's AI-generated and full of the weird errors associated with that. Textures that bleed into one another, repeating objects that warp as they get further away. It's all quite unpleasant to behold. The strange part is how little some of the artwork represents what's in the text descriptions. Could they not have based the AI art around the actual text of the game? It certainly doesn't seem like they did. The result is a game that's being held back by its visuals, which is a pity. 3 out of 10. Royal Revolt Warriors. It's a new Survivors-like that boasts solid gameplay, a good variety of characters, each with uniquely useful skills, and some extremely pretty 3D character design. I'm always looking for a Survivor-like to play while I'm on my exercise bike, so if they send me a copy of the full version, I'll be very interested in playing more. 7 out of 10. I've been the Hidden Object Guru. Thanks for watching. If you had a good time and you'd like to see more, there's buttons coming up to help with that. Questions, comments, suggestions for games I should check out, go in the comments section below the video. Play my game for free over at the Hidden Object Guru itch.io page. Link in the description as well. We'll see you back here for more game reviews as I have a chance to play them, but until then I'll say that's right. Au revoir.